The biggest success of this project has to be the number of volunteers recruited. We engaged with 20 different link schemes and community transport groups across Wiltshire and were successful in recruiting 131 volunteers. The link schemes and community transport groups have both benefited from the new volunteers recruited, but the benefit has been far greater for some of the new volunteers who have now found that they themselves are less lonely and isolated and are really happy to be involved in an organisation that helps others. Many of the new volunteers have attended a community organising workshop, which has given them the tools to be able to engage with and identify some of those lonely and isolated individuals within their community and encourage them to become more involved in local groups.
The greatest impact that funding has had on us as an organisation is previously we had funding for transporting people to medical appointments and some practical things to help them sort of remain independent. But this funding has allowed us to take people to social events and allow them a bit more of a social life. They may be able to visit friends and family. For instance, if people live in a care home, they've been able to come home and visit their family at home. A lot of people who otherwise would have been stuck inside their four walls have been able to get out and about, meet friends and access the social world again.
Our passengers' reaction has been really positive. The Tackling Loneliness project has enabled them to go to places they couldn't previously get to make new friends and to see old ones. It has been a really positive experience for everyone involved.
The Tackling Loneliness project has had a huge impact on the people we support here at the Beacon Centre. One of our participants described our transport service as a lifeline, and we think that's a really apt way of putting it. Many of those who use our transport service would otherwise be unable to get out of the house. Their sight loss obviously means they can't drive, public transport can be inaccessible, and walking somewhere on foot can be challenging if you're blind or partially sighted. We're delighted to have been able to open up the world to people, particularly post-COVID-19. Connecting them to their community through transport has made them feel less lonely and not as isolated, while improving their well-being, confidence and independence. We have loved being a part of this project.
Our project, called Out and About, took groups of older people out for day trips once a week. It was a good use of our daycare minibus in its downtime. Many of the older people who came on the trips had not been out since before COVID. They said it gave them the confidence to go out again and that they felt safe with us. Many new friendships were made. We intend to continue to provide the trips even though funding has ended.
The scheme was not without its challenges. It took time to garner interest, but once we got over that initial hurdle, we found that there was great demand. We had a number of trips oversubscribed and had to limit passengers to one trip per month, although we put them on a waiting list for cancellations. We quickly learnt which venues were the most popular and duplicated them in the later stages. We're not convinced that the surveys present the full picture of the success that the lunch clubs had, as we heard more anecdotally, and we are aware that many of our clients underplay their feelings of loneliness. We know that some people that met on the trip now write to each other, and that others plan to go on the same trip so that they can meet up.
I would say the biggest success of our pilot project, Reconnecting the Community, has been moving into a new geographical area. It's been almost a year now that we've been approached by the local GP link workers and social prescribers to provide transport to get vulnerable older people out and about and socialising with one another again. Older people who were already vulnerable or experienced health issues prior to the pandemic were at a greater risk of further isolation and loneliness. The pandemic really disrupted many support systems as physical distancing guidelines made it difficult for older, vulnerable adults to connect with one another. So our project got people in this geographical area back together, socialising with one another and engaging with each other.
We have seen friendships grow between our beneficiaries. They are accessing more in their local community and confidence is growing. We have also seen that people are booking on our longer trips as a result of this increased confidence. We have a gentleman who had previously suffered a stroke and his speech had been affected. He has travelled with us on our day trips. He's also started to visit the hub and is accessing further support from there. He's finding it easier to communicate with us, which also helps him to become less isolated. As a team, we have been overwhelmed with the positivity, the great feedback and the success of the project so far. We are looking forward to planning more trips for next year, as well as some extras for the next few months.
We supported just over 40 people in Southampton who were lonely and isolated to get back into their local area, make new friends and overcome the isolation that's built up over the last few years due to COVID. One example of a case study was after 6 visits, this lady was able to get out, walk to her local shops and meet her friends. This was a process that was built up over the 6 sessions, and the travel buddy was able to break it down and was there to reassure her and support her on every step of the way. We are also very pleased to say that we won't be ending the project here. We have been given some funding by a local provider to carry on during the summer.
This project has undoubtedly helped care homes to allow their residents to get out into the community. And care homes were doing a lot of those sorts of outings before the pandemic, but for obvious reasons they stopped then, and there didn't seem to be any suggestion that they would restart. So what this funding through the project has enabled us to do is to offer that service again to care homes at no charge, so that they can actually see the benefit for their residents of getting out into local communities. So I'm very hopeful that they'll continue to do that in the future.
The biggest success that we saw was just seeing how many men were able to join in with activities, forge new friendships, and just to see them mixing and no longer feeling the isolation that they felt prior. I would say that the project has affected all the men really in a positive way. They all identify as having developed new friendships, and they feel much less isolated, and they actively come to us for help with other things now, which has opened the door to a lot of things and a lot of experiences for them that they would regard as positive.
In terms of impact on our clients, it's really fair to say that there is no one that we've spoken to, either from formal feedback or informal feedback, where we haven't had a positive effect. Be it feeling more connected to their community, making new friends, volunteers feeling as though they've got a purpose back from having retired a few years ago and having lost that. All of those things, again, back to that whole picture of prevention's so much better than cure, and keeping people active for longer can only benefit everybody within our community and society.
So the biggest impact of the pilot has been on how we think about isolation and loneliness. The surveys revealed that existing clients who only use the volunteer car service for medical appointments and other practical needs may still be feeling lonely. As a result, we've added 2 questions to our registration forms, which go out to new clients and annually to existing clients. So we're asking people if they'd like to have a more active social life, and if they'd like one of our staff to contact us to discuss that. And the other thing that we're doing is we're working on a new model for befriending in partnership with our local Age UK and Home Instead. And we're looking for funding for a pilot of the new model, which has the potential to really revolutionise the approach to befriending locally.
The biggest success of our pilot has been the amount of people who've been able to come to our weekly community sessions, because they know at the end of the day, they don't have to worry about how they're going to go back home. A lot of the people who come to our community sessions struggle with loneliness and feelings of depression. And it's great that they get to indulge in a feeling of community. A lot of the women who started to come are 60 plus, 70 plus, even sometimes 80 plus. And they really do love it. They love the community. They love the friendship. They love all the arts and crafts.
The pilot brief was to have an impact to tackle loneliness and isolation through recruiting young volunteers. So that was 18 to 25-year-olds into our community transport charity. What we were finding actually in real life was that a lot of young people are very, very isolated and lonely, with a significant amount of kind of need, perhaps due to lockdowns partly, and just kind of how the world is, experiencing quite a lot of social anxiety. What we've really loved is seeing the intergenerational sort of connection between our older passengers and the younger people.
For more information, please visit ctauk.org.